To start with, what age were you when you first became of the name Old Tom Morris?
Well, I guess I was about 14. As most people know, I was born in Bathgate and played my golf in Bathgate. So my golf wasn't really seaside golf. But one of the members at Bathgate was also a member of the new club at St Andrews. And when I was young, he popped me into his car and we drove up and played there. And when we were playing the 18th, the thing I saw on the right was a shop called Tom Morris, and it was opposite the 18th green. And that was and I said, "Who's Tom Morris?" And that's when I realized that was the shop that Tom Morris was in his memory.
Do you think that he gets the credit he deserves for being such a trailblazer in the 1800s? Well,
he probably doesn't. I mean, you really need to look into the history of Old Tom Morris to realize what a visionary he was. I know Alan Robertson was credited of being the first sort of professional and best player in the world at that time, and Tom Morris was his assistant. He was in his business working on clubs, apprentice term and things like that. But of course, Alan Robertson, as you know, had a great business going, making feathery balls. And Tom Morris felt that this isn't the future, these feathery balls. The future is going to be gutta-percha balls. And of course, as you know, David, that's why he got sacked by Alan Robertson, because he started to play the gutta-percha ball. Now, and so that was going to affect Alan Robertson's business. But what it tells you about Old Tom Morris was he was a visionary. That's what it tells you. And so that everything he did was calculated. He knew that feathery ball wasn't going to last forever. He knew the gutta-percha ball was the ball for the future, make golf more enjoyable and ball goes further and things like that. And so that went right through his, that was a template for his vision in golf. And it went into greenkeeping as well. So not only was he a visionary in equipment and a forerunner in making the best equipment, but also a great golfer, but also a great greenkeeper. In fact, the books say he was really the founding father of greenkeeping, and he probably was.
What's your view on a very old course like Balcomie versus equipment?
Well, I think old Tom Morris would embrace innovation and embrace change, and he just saw that with the golf ball. He was quite happy to get rid of the feathery ball and bring in the gutty ball. That must have been a monumental change at that time. That's like the argument about the ball today back then, and he knew that, so he wouldn't have minded that. I think you know there's a lot to be made of the equipment. My own view is that Old Tom Morris would have liked the changes, because it makes people play golf better. It makes people stay in the game longer, which is what he wants to do. And but you've still got to hit it in certain places as well. It's all very well hitting it a long way and enjoying your golf. You've got to hit it where it's got to go. And the handicaps haven't exactly come down as well, commensurate with the equipment change for most amateur golfers at a club. The improvements in the equipment and the golf ball are really the big beneficiaries. Are like a 0.01% of all the golfers in the world. I mean, those are the pros at the pinnacle of the game. Those are the people who are the big beneficiaries of it. What it's done to the handicap golfer and the amateur golfer club, it's made them enjoy golf longer and made them enjoy golf. And I'm sure Old Tom Morris would have said that's the aim of golf, to keep people in golf longer so that they get out there and play with their friends and enjoy the walk around the golf courses. And if you can swing the golf ball with the titanium heads and the graphite shaft, if you can now swing them and hit that ball, better, and that's what it's all about. I mean, I can, I'm giving my age, away here, but persimmon heads and the old steel shafts, and I actually started golf with hickory shaft. These were all difficult clubs to play, and difficult clubs to hang on to when you're playing, and you're fighting the equipment, you're fighting the course, you're fighting the golf ball, you're fighting the weather, and the modern equipment takes a couple of those elements out of it, and I think old Tom Morris would have loved that. I really do. I think if you put him right there today on the first tee next year in the Open Championship, I think he would hope there would be a nice 15 or 20 mile an hour wind blowing into you at the first. I think he would enjoy that. And
he played most of your golf on parkland courses.
Yeah.
But you did play quite a bit of golf on links courses. And did you not win a tournament at London Links along the road from us?
Yes, I won the Scottish Professionals Championship in a playoff against Eric Brown.
How was that, playing against, a fellow Bathgate guy, a guy who I assume was a bit of a mentor for you?
Well, he was. I mean, he was Eric was an inspiration to my generation at Bathgate. He was the one that we wanted to follow, the junior section, the men. My father would take me and watch the pro tournaments, and we weren't interested in Gary Player and Arnold Palmer. We were only interested in going to watch Eric Brown play. So we're going to Troon, we're going to a tournament at Royal Burgess. There was a tournament all there in Martini, and we went along there. And my father's two favourite golfers were Eric Brown and Christy O'Connor, and they played together that day. He took me, and so he was in heaven. And then he would play in this senior service at Dalmahoy, and I went to watch there. So Eric Brown he and John Panton were the founding fathers of professional tournament play in Scotland. There's no question about it. Great players. But Eric coming from Bathgate was quite special. And then for me to play him, I mean, Eric was getting to the end of his playing career, and I was like 21-year-old, and I played him in the London Links. And it was a playoff, and I felt nervous in beating him. But believe it or not, Eric calmed me down, and I went on to beat him in that playoff.
Do you still, despite being brought up on parkland courses, did you still really enjoy playing on the tight turf of links and into the weather?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was young and growing up, it was a great day out to go to St Andrews and go to some of these golf courses. And one of the members at Bathgate, a guy called Jimmy Connors, was also a member at Crail. And so he took me to play Crail when I was very young. And one of the reasons I spoke at your bicentenary dinner when it was 200 years old was because of Jimmy Connor. He asked me if you would come and speak at the dinner. And so I did speak at a dinner. I mean, it was a big dinner. When you come on at 2 o'clock in the morning to speak, 2 a.m. to make your speech, it's not easy. You don't know if anybody's listening because there's quite a lot of whiskies and haggis being drunk and eaten by then.
If old Tom Morris was to come back, as I say, 200 years after he was born, and he was to stand on the first tee at Balcomie, and he's looking at a landscape that is pretty much unchanged from the day that he last stood there. And he was to cast around and look at the clubhouse and look at all the members and the juniors and the women playing golf and the global nature of the game. Do you think that he would be particularly proud of his part of the legacy? Do you think he would be he would have a measure of? Do you think he himself would understand the great impact he had in the game, or do you think all this would come as a surprise to him?
Well, that's a very good question. He was really laying down the grassroots for golf in the future back then, and I think he would be pleased. He would be pleased to know that his legacy is still highly respected today, that his golf courses have stood the test of time. I think he would be pleased that golf is really being played by everyone now. It's not just the sort of upper classes he'd be very pleased that the ordinary working man can play golf. I think that would probably please him more than anything, because, you know, he started as a caddy and then he ended up as a greenkeeper and a player. And it was, and, you know, golf in those days was a very elitist sport. And he would be pleased that barriers have been broken. And golf is now, especially in Scotland, open to everyone. He'd be pleased with the landscape at Balcomie, just like everyone else. He would get a thrill, I think, every time he stood on that tee, just the same as every member does when he stands in that tee, no matter what the weather is, and decide and figure out how you're going to get around the course today, where the weather's coming from, and what type of shot that you're trying to hit. He'd be pleased that that's still the same as it was for him, the turn of the century. And yeah, I think. But what you know, what is interesting when you say that sometimes you forget about old Tom Morris, but you know, the Americans that come across to play, who make the pilgrimage across to play St Andrews, they know who old Tom Morris is. They've got a great respect for the history of the game, and they want to come across, make that part of Fife their final destination. They want to play St Andrews, they want to play Balcomie, they want to play the Jubilee, they want to follow in old Tom Morris's footsteps. I've noticed when I've travelled around the world that, you know, Scotland has got such a sentimental value for everyone who wants to play golf, and and Fife's where they want to end up, you know.
Bernard, thank you very, very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure the members of Crail really enjoy hearing your thoughts about old Tom and his association with Balcomie.
Yes, thanks, David.
Thanks
Nice to speak.